What's good, everybody? Welcome to One Foot Down, a college fantasy football podcast on the Fantasy in Frames Network. I'm your host, Chris Battistel, and I'm with my co-host, Mike Haase. We have hit the double digits, and we are a couple weeks away from the college fantasy football playoffs. We are almost there, and we are ready to get you ready for the final push to glory. Mike, let's get it poppin', brother.
Welcome, football fanatics, to the One Foot Down podcast on the Fantasy in Frames Network. Your gridiron guides, Chris and Mike, are geared up to lead you through the thrilling world of college fantasy football. Whether we're diving into Power 5 giants or uncovering hidden gems, brace yourselves for expert insights, analysis, and daring predictions. Stay in the game. Subscribe, rate, and review. This is your 2024 source for college fantasy football dominance. Let the fantasy frenzy begin.
Mike, in what has been probably one of the most exciting college football seasons yet with the 12-team playoff, we got our top 25 rankings. What's more surprising to you, Mike? Colorado being ranked in the top 25 as 23 or Michigan being unranked?
Wow. Oh, I think Michigan being unranked is interesting. I know we at the start of the year with the quarterback position being they had such a good quarterback last year, but I thought the defense and that run game would have them, still up there a little bit. Maybe not top 10, but I thought in the teens, a little bit surprising. And I know with Colorado, you've been surprised. They're hanging tough. So interesting.
They're winning some games that I had them chalked up as losses at the beginning of the season.
Agree.
So it's good to see that they've been able to, especially changing conferences now too, enter the top 25. Yeah. I mean, that's exciting, especially with the expanded playoff. If they make a push down the stretch here and win out, there's a good shot for them to be able to enter that playoff. And I mean, Coach Prime in the college football playoff, and that's made for TV stuff.
Like. That will be, yep.
Yeah, and we got a couple undefeated or few undefeated teams still. Oregon at 8-0 is the number 1 ranked team. Penn State is the number 3 ranked team. They're 7-0. Miami with the potential Heisman award-winning quarterback Cam Ward is ranked number 5 at 8-0. BYU undefeated at 8-0 is ranked number 9. Iowa State 7-0. Indiana's 8-0. Pittsburgh 7-0, Army 7-0, Navy lost this past week. I'm sure you know about that one, Notre Dame fan.
They're hanging tough too a little bit. They I know their schedule, but they should get in, but I don't know if they'll be ranked. They're just gonna get in.
And then that early loss to NIU might hurt, man.
It's gonna hurt. They're gonna be down near the bottom. We'll have to see how those brackets. That'll be a test when the brackets come out, figuring that out. So.
Yeah, we're right around the corner, brother. It starts in December. We're a month away. We're at the end of October. College football playoff is here. We're entering an exciting month of November for college football, and we're entering an exciting month of November for college fantasy football. It is week 10. We got week 10 and week 11, and depending on how your leagues are structured, week 12, 13, and 14 for the college fantasy football playoff. So home stretch is here, 5 more weeks to go, and we're going to get you ready for it. But before we do that, let's get into last week's top performers, Mike. The top performing quarterback, Arkansas quarterback, Taylor Green, 314 passing yards, 5 passing TDs, 79 rushing yards, 1 rushing TD, good for 46.46 fantasy points versus Mississippi State, 79.3% completion percentage, his highest on the year, 10.8 yards per attempt, also his highest on the year. After averaging 30.9 fantasy points in his first 3 outings, he was a stud. He struggled over the last 4, averaging 14.12 fantasy points. So it was good to see him get back on that horse and be that fantasy stud that we know Green to be, Mike.
Yeah, disappointed I did not play. I have him on a couple teams and haven't played him. I've been sifting through each week, trying to stay on top of things, and missed putting him in, which that hurt for this weekend because he's definitely on the rise.
Well, it was a rough stretch for him too. Like I mentioned, he had that stretch of 4 games where he was averaging less than 15 fantasy points per game. So, I mean, I don't blame you for not starting him this past week, considering what he put out recently. Out of Rhythm Fantasy Sports, who are they? We were off last week due to me. I was really under the weather. I could not make it out. I tried my darndest. I tried every home remedy under the book, but still was unable to go. The top producing running back, Jarquez Hunter from Auburn, 23 rushes, 278 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 43.7 fantasy points. Dominated Kentucky, a team that has allowed 132.6 rushing yards per game on the season. Jarquez Hunter went out there and just absolutely doubled that in one game. He had 4 receptions to go with his elite rushing production. On the year, he's averaging 17.46 fantasy points per game. Mike, did you start Jarquez Hunter? I know you didn't start Taylor Green. Did you start Jarquez Hunter?
I think if I did, it would have been a cheat code there. Best ball leagues probably have Jarquez Hunter, but not many in this lineup teams I have. I don't have. I was too busy drafting Dylan Sampson everywhere. And Jarquez Hunter's been doing very well. Excellent.
Yes, he has. Out of Rhythm Fantasy Sports. That's why you hit a little moonshine and get on with the show. Brother, I tried it. I was putting grappa in the coffee. I was hitting grappa straight up, the little sambuca. I was trying everything to get on last week. And I couldn't do it, man. I tried my Mike, I wasn't partying, man. I was trying to get better, Mike. I wasn't having a party.
I hear you. Oh, yeah, I
wasn't having a party with a Goldschlager. All right, top producing wide receiver, Coleman Owen from the Ohio Bobcats, 6 receptions, 146 receiving yards, 2 receiving TDs. They also matched that up with 1 rush for 22 rushing yards and 1 rushing TD. Good for 37.8 fantasy points. 50% of this kid's games, he's put up over 100 yards, 3 games of over 130 yards. He's rostered in 33% of Fantrax leagues, and he demands a 33% of his team's target share. Mike, Coleman Owen is a must-add. He has a bye this week, so you'll most likely get him for cheap. And then he has Kent State, Eastern Michigan, Toledo, and Ball State. That ding was perfect timing.
Maybe I need to pick up a player. I was just saying to you before.
You don't need to pick up any player. You need to pick up Coleman Owen if he's on your waivers, because after this bye week, that schedule is one of the most fantasy lucrative schedules on the docket for college fantasy football players. Let me say that to you again. He's got Kent State, Eastern Michigan, Toledo, and Ball State for weeks 11, 12, 13, and 14. That's the stretch.
Okay, I'll go get him.
Yeah, you will, Mike. Yeah, you will.
Well, I was saying I thought I'd be done waivers. I think seeing your list, I'm not done waivers.
And then the top producing tight end from last week, Tanner Cazio from Ball State, 9 receptions, 78 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, 24.3 fantasy points. One of the very few times, Mike, that we have to change the graphic from Harold Fannin to another tight end. And this guy Koziel. I'm just gonna butcher his name because that's what I do. I suck at pronouncing names. He has been the Ball State offense over the last 6 games. 9-9, 9-8, 9-9 in total receptions. He was drafted in 14% of leagues and only started in 16 or 66%. Tanner is a weekly started.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust Chris. This isn't even waivers out of rhythm.
What?
This isn't even waivers.
Players of the week.
Top 9 top performers, brother. We haven't even got into them.
Yeah, that was me. I was just giving a little tease that maybe, maybe a few of these guys are on waivers like Coleman Owen. Look, Chris is throwing these stats out here. It's just like I'm in a video game. And
Justin Nottingham says Ricky Hunt is another guy to go get for Ohio with Tyusel. You know what? He's right.
Got him, yeah.
He's right. Go invest in some of that offense because that schedule is great. That schedule is terrific. All right. You know what? He brought up the waivers, Mike. We're going to get into some of the waiver ads for week 7. Or no, sorry, week 10. Graphic 7, week 10. The waiver ads for week 10. We're going to give you one each. Our week 10 quarterback is Caden Veltkamp. Rostership 34% across Fantrax leagues. He's QB 19 in fantasy points per game on the year, averaging 25.49 fantasy points every week. 5 rushing touchdowns on the year on 48 carries. He draws Kennesaw State this week, which is a plus matchup for Caden Veltkamp, Michael.
Yeah, good. I almost picked this quarterback for what we're going to do tonight. Plays and fades and stuff, yeah, because I had a few in mind. So he's been doing quite well, and the team's playing decent. So
Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, baby, sweet mascot. All right, the waiver ad at running back is Isaac Brown from Louisville. Rostership 41% across Fantrax leagues. If you play in any kind of C2C league, Brown is a must add. Even if a C2C CFF league, you're adding Isaac Brown. Over the last 4 weeks, he has been a focal point of Louisville's offense. He's been the RB20, averaging 21.6 fantasy points per game over the last 4. This week, he draws Clemson, who allow 130 rushing yards against per game. Mike, do you own any Isaac Brown?
Gosh, maybe one, maybe two. You're hitting all these guys that I don't own.
Hey, now's your chance, brother.
I know.
They're owning less than 50% of Fantrax leagues. The wide receiver ad, Savion Williams, coming off a big game, rostered in 41% of Fantrax leagues. The best part of Savion's game is he's used in both the pass and rush attack for TCU. He gets Baylor this week, who allow 235 passing yards against on the season and 315 passing yards against over the last 3 weeks. So Baylor has been a leaky faucet defensively against opposing teams' passing offense. Speaking of WKU, is Dalvin Smith a play this week, Michael?
He's been fairly quiet this year, hasn't he? That being said, now that if you can predict some of these teams getting on a roll, now is when to play some of them, I think, in my opinion, just because they haven't been having great seasons yet. Now's the home stretch if you're going to gamble and you're going to, with the pedigree of a player. So we expected more, but I mean, we've talked about the position all year. Although that being said, is he just listed as wide receiver now, or is he still dual?
Hey, he's just wide receiver.
Wide receiver, yeah.
He's just
wide receiver. It's tough, yeah. I had in my mind there he might have been dual, but I might talk myself out of it.
I mean, the matchup's great against Kennesaw State, but the overall usage for Dalvin Smith hasn't been great. So, I mean, if you need a spot start, you can maybe pop him in your flex because you're chasing the matchup against the Owls. I mean, over his last 4 matchups, He's 4 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, and 4 targets. He only has 1 touchdown over the last 5 games. So to me, Dalvin Smith is the player that has become touchdown dependent. So if you have another option, I would maybe lean that way. I'm kind of shy away from Dalvin Smith. Unless there's an injury here that I'm missing, I'd probably just stay away.
Right. I've noticed they're really spreading the ball everywhere too. Like they're spreading it all over the place in their offense. You pick when I tried Messer a couple weeks, it just hasn't been working. It's been a mess. Anyway, but because the one game I was watching it, they're spreading it to everybody, and that's what we don't like in fantasy football, right? Spreading it too thin. So.
He says Justin says he was looking at him as a spot start. Again, the matchup's great. Could be a great spot to start Dalvin Smith. If there is a week possibly to start him, it could be this week because of the matchup against Kennesaw State there. I believe the over-under is set at, let me look at it here, 50.5 points. So they are expecting decent amount of points to be scored this coming week in that matchup. So again, it could be a good spot to start Dalvin Smith. Doesn't really offer you a decent floor, so you're kind of be chasing a boom game from him. Can he give that to you? History tells us from this past season, at least, that it's not going to happen. So
right.
Out of Rhythm says LJ Martin, BYU. Yeah, LJ Martin's an absolute stud. He's been playing great. Utah State's Rashul Faison. Yep, absolutely.
Both great picks.
I think I was gonna put Faison on this list, but I think Utah State's got a bye this week. So we wanted to try to keep our waiver ads to players that were playing this upcoming week and not try to give some stashes. But if there are players that you want to stash and Rashul Faison is on your waivers, he's a pickup. Blake Bosma, tight end from Western Michigan, is a pickup. Coleman Owen, wide receiver that we just talked about from Ohio, he's got a bye this week. That's why he's not on this list. He's owned in under 50% of leagues. He's a pickup. Rashul Faison. Haj Malik Williams, the quarterback from UNLV, who's rushing for nearly 100 yards a game, is owned in under 50% of Fantrax leagues. He's got a bye this week. He should be picked up, especially if you're in a 2-3 quarterback league. You're picking up Haj Malik Williams. And then our tight end grab, if he's on your waivers, Terrence Carter. I mean, he was our grab last time. Yep. He was 9% owned in Fantrax leagues. He's 34% owned this time, man. So leader in targets on the offense. He has Texas State this week. I believe there are 3 games tomorrow. So 3 games on Tuesday. If you're listening to this on Monday, 3 games on Tuesday, October 29th. New Mexico State versus FIU. Louisiana Raging Cajuns versus Texas State. Louisiana Tech versus Sam Houston. Then there's 2 games on Wednesday. Jacksonville State versus Liberty. Kennesaw State versus Western Kentucky. We just touched on that a little bit. We'll touch on that a little bit more. And then Halloween game, Tulane, Charlotte on Thursday. So make sure you are setting your lineups. There are games on Tuesday. Kevin Coleman, Mississippi State. Yeah, no, absolutely. Kevin Coleman has been light. I'm not a fan of the matchup this week. We talked him up weeks ago. Williams. Yep. Savion. Yep.
Yep. And I picked him up. I listened.
Yeah, but see, Savion's just one of those guys. Boom and bust, right? But great opportunity this week in his matchup. All right, Mike, let's get to the plays and fades for week 10. Who you got at quarterback, brother? He's a cover athlete.
He's look at that. Look at those that graphic right there. If I can say his name right. Yeah, I had Veltkamp was on my mind. But I have Nicholas Vattiato. Wow, that's that. I think I
3 times fast.
Vattiato for Middle Tennessee versus the UTEP Gold Miners. No, what is UTEP's name again, Chris? Come on. think there's something like that anyway. But the matchup should be decent. I would think so. I think there'll be some points in this game, but I like this offense. We like a number of the players on this offense. They may not be like a boom offense, but yet good or above average. So I'm feeling this time of year, looking these few weeks with all of the buys, it would take us 10 minutes to read through the buys you put in the notes of all those teams. So I'm trying to find some different players, and I tend to pick them if we have the third flex. So it might be difficult to start them with the 2 QB, but if you're playing a lot of leagues with the 3 QB, I think maybe you could take advantage of putting him in the lineup. Nick, last week, he was 25 for 36, almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's been roughly doing that. So what I like to do is get him in there. If you can get in due to bye week trouble, and he can produce that, that's not bad for that third spot to guarantee you getting the points you need maybe to win your week. He's only rostered 32% of leagues. So, I mean, it's there, and the over-under is similar. We were looking at a lot of over-unders. If you can get above the 50 this week, it's worth the risk, to play some of those games, because they actually have a number of games at 40. And I'm going, oh my gosh, that's going to be tough. So this was 51.5. He completes the ball almost 65% of the time, and he's attempting close to 35 attempts most games. So I just kind of think that maybe they did expect more. His numbers jump off the charts.
I think we all did this year out of him.
And we dropped, and he was sitting there. So I'm thinking now, there's no time left, but you can't wait any longer. And with all those buys, maybe give it a go. The passing attack is there. The game might be right. I think there's going to be 60 points. I just have a feeling. I know they have it there. I think they'll score. And I think maybe his numbers will be there for you due to all those bye weeks.
I mean, what a disappointing player this year. He had a great 2023 for fantasy managers. Waiver wire ad, gave you solid weeks, week in and week out. And then this year, just absolutely shit the bed. Just shit the bed.
And they've kept him in. They thought he would run a bit more in that. So often, as you know, my strategy, I think I say it a number of times, is it's who's going to be next up in some of the momentum, and it's been building. And then if you can hit a couple that we're filling out of these big rosters, that's going to do it for you for the week. Because the consistency amongst a lot of these players, the few players that are consistent are surprising. That we talked about, like Eli Holstein and Retzlaff. Now that we've been talking these different quarterbacks, and they're actually, some of them are quite consistent, really surprising. But if you can't get all of them, you'll have some of these guys on your bench, like Vitatio.
Yeah, like just looking at his last year production, he had one game where he put up single-digit points, albeit in the championship weekend, which is completely disappointing. He had 3 games where he put up at least 30 fantasy points on the week. This year, he has 4 games with single-digit points, 2 of them back-to-back, all those games under 9 points. Only 1 game over 30 points on the season, and his second best outing which was last week at 20.78 points. So yeah, he might not be as rostered as we were hoping that he would be at the start of the season, but I think it's warranted. He's been a complete disappointment on the year. So I like that he was able to put up a decent week last week, and I'm trying to buy in, Mike, to what you're saying.
And the 2 weeks
this week, but
I'm going that he's on a roll
because I used to own quite a bit of shares of this guy. He's just let me down week in, week out, man.
Yeah, we're in. So what I'm trying to do with our the parameters you give these picks, I'm trying to give us these picks for the tough choices based on on the bye weeks, on the super flex. Like I wouldn't go ahead if you have 2, obviously.
Sure.
So a lot of the format of the leagues and a lot of the heavy buys and injuries, that to get down to this guy, it's the last 2 out of the last 3 games, he has those numbers almost exact 25, 36, 297, 2. I'm just saying that if momentum's anything, and in fantasy, we know you got to jump and play him, because if you watch and this week it's 325 and 3 TDs, you'll be like, oh man, that super flex. I'd be dying. I would have won. Like,
sure. No, yeah, you bring up the buys as well. There's 20 teams on buy this week. 20 teams.
Great
Alabama, QB. Boston College, BYU, California, Cincinnati, Colorado, Georgia Tech, Kansas, LSU, Maryland, Missouri, Notre Dame, Oregon State, Rutgers, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Wake Forest, Washington State, and West Virginia. Now, that is 7 of the top 20 scoring QBs, 7 of the top scoring running backs, and 7 of the top scoring tight ends. So, yes, and you can see where you're coming at from the approach of starting Vadiato here with the situation that you're put in. If you're housing 2 of these 7 quarterbacks, you might have no choice.
Oh, easy. We got Milrow. We have Milrow, Ratzlaff. We have, who else we got in there? Sorsby.
Mateer, Sorsby. Billy Edwards is in there. Garrett Nussmeier is in there. Thomas Castellanos is in there. Jake Retzlaff is in there. Shedeur Sanders is in there.
Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers. Well,
come on. We're talking quarterbacks. Sorry,
we're talking fantasy quarterbacks. We're not just talking quarterbacks.
We're not.
All right, let's get into the fade. I get your point of view. It's tough for me as a Vadiato owner to put him in. But hey, I put him in last week and he didn't do too bad. Out of Rhythm says, is Ohio that bad? They are a fade. They couldn't blow out the Huskers. Ohio is overrated. It's not that they're that bad. Will Howard is my fade on the week. He is QB 16 in fantasy points per game. He's putting up 25.64 fantasy points. He's got no games where he's put up under 22 fantasy points on the year, 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. Only 1 game where he's put up 1 passing touchdown, and that was surprisingly against Western Michigan. Every other game he's put up 2 or more passing TDs. Has one, if not the best supporting casts in the nation. Do you agree with that, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
You can go down the list who he's got between his backfield and his wide receiver room. It's just 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. This week, though, Will Howard has got Penn State.
Yeah, I went
in Penn State.
Ooh. That'd be a good game to go see.
It's not a whiteout game. It's a helmet stripe game. So it's still going to be a pretty raucous environment. Penn State, undefeated, going in as the number 3 ranked team, is going to want to put a mark on Ohio State's record. On the season, they let up the 12th least passing yards per game. At home, that number goes from 174 passing yards per game to 156 passing yards per game allowed. Opposing quarterbacks are averaging 10.08 fantasy points against the Nittany Lions. Only 2 of the 7 quarterbacks have hit double-digit fantasy points. No QB has scored over 18 fantasy points against Penn State on the year. Penn State enters the game as home dogs. The over-under is currently set at 47.5. I think Will Howard's going to have a ton of problems with communication. The one thing that could throw this fade through a loop is that lack of communication and that communication breakdown, which could lead to situations where the play breaks down or Will Howard is just put into a situation where he's using his legs a lot more than what he should be doing. So that could be really the only situation that I find in this analysis that could throw a wrench into my fade on the week with Will Howard, Mike.
Yeah, listening to what you're saying about that, did they seem just kind of like stale a little bit. The word came to mind. Like, I don't know whether they have anything. Smith has been great. He's been above, like, amazing. Egbuka here and there, off and on. And as you're talking, if you compare the two teams, we talked weeks ago about both of these backfields sharing these backfields. And I really like how Singleton and Catron Allen or whatever are coming together like I don't know. They seem, I think, are meshing better than Henderson Judkins. And Singleton they're using as a receiver, and they're blending Allen in to do a bit of the crashing and the runs. And Singleton is awesome as the wide out they needed. That's what I've noticed. There's like, wow, he's like, and they're using him, and then the great tight end, and off you go. Penn State will be tough. Now that we just talked about it, like if they keep the strategy of what they're building in the offensive game plan, they're going to be tough. And I think Ohio State has so many. This is the problem, and maybe Will Howard's not quite as flashy as what they need to spread it around. Like, that's all. CJ Stroud's not there. So, I mean, but that's no block.
CJ Stroud,
So that's just my little quick take on what both those teams is there. I think Penn State's a little notch up, but we'll see.
Yeah, who are you starting this week, Mike? Vattiato or Will Howard?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would almost start Vattiato in some circumstances, depending what. That's tough. They're pretty close. You might want to flip that coin. We were talking about that. The matchups will matter. No pun intended. But I don't know if you go to Penn. Well, that'll be told if they're going to have to let it go. They're going to have to air it out. Can he air it out? Can he just air it out all over the place? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. The quarterback play is Nick Vattiato from Middle Tennessee, and the fade is Will Howard from Ohio State against the Penn State Nittany Lions. All right, let's get into the running backs. The running back play of the week. Elijah Young from the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. It's been a tale of two seasons for Elijah Young. Over the first half of the season, he averaged 10.5 carries. And then over the last 3 games, he's averaged 19.6 carries per game. He's been involved in the passing game as well. He averages 4 targets per matchup. On the year, Elijah Young is averaging 14 fantasy points per game in his last 3 outings. He has been handling Western Kentucky's workload out of the backfield, 70% share of the team's running back rushes. And when you add the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, that number goes to 59%. So he's really involved in what Western Kentucky wants to do with the game. Over the last 3 games, though, those rushing percentages have gone up from 70% to 80%. So he's handling 80% of the team's rushes, which is great number for a running back, especially over the last few weeks. They've been really leaning on him. He owns 12% of the team's target share. He has been the third passing option for the Hilltoppers, which isn't great. You kind of want that running back to be that either that first or second option right in that sweet spot. But we'll take third option in this case. But it's the matchup and the recent usage was what you want to be married to, and that's what we're chasing here this week. We mentioned that at the top of the show, Western Kentucky draws Kennesaw State this week, the 91st ranked defense when it comes to opponent rushing yards per game, allowing 174.2 rush yards against. Kennesaw State, though, has been decent against opposing running backs, only allowing 12 fantasy points per game to the position. But, Michael, big but on that, to running backs that are featured, so running backs that are toting the rock 18 or more times, those running backs are averaging 30 points per game, 30 fantasy points per game.
Wow.
Albeit there's only been 2, but the running backs that have seen a healthy amount of workload have seen a healthy amount of fantasy points against Kennesaw State. Over the last 3 weeks, Kennesaw State has allowed the 20th most rushing yards against per game. And that number sits at 216.3. The over-under is set at 50.5 points. Western Kentucky opening as double-digit favorites. A great spot to take advantage of a possible positive game script here for Elijah Young out of Western Kentucky. And that's why, for me, he's a play on the week, Michael.
Yeah, good. I like it. See, you come up with these names, Chris. See, you're just, and then I'm going to go find him. Well, how much was he rostered again?
I haven't checked, but I'm just going to say Delbert Mims has been on fire, baby. Delbert Mims out of Eastern Michigan has been lighting the world up.
Wow. I need to hear some good news.
Yeah.
Well, there are number injuries, like looking a lot of the backs. Like I have, man, I'm like,
as long as our savior Ashton Janty.
Yeah, I don't have anywhere.
Do what you got to do. Pray who you got to pray to. That guy better be healthy throughout the whole season, man. Because I think we lost Ollie Gordon, did we not? Not that we had him that much during the season anyways. But
yeah, I kept asking you, when is he playing? I sat him the 1 week and out and then played him and sat him. And putting that notification out there seems to be not very consistent. And I don't know what to do with someone. That is one of the catches to it all. You get surprised at the end, yeah. All
right.
So I put
We got to play Elijah Young. Who's the fade, Michael?
Well, I tried to go with a tougher fade, a player I like, Quayle Conley. So I tried to do what you asked, Chris. You asked me, don't just sit some player that doesn't have any solid pedigree and consistency. But look at the matchup. Look, I just kind of expect more. He's rostered heavily, 75%, ranked around 38. Because looking at the top 20 when we do this process, the top 20, like you're not sitting anybody going in the top 25 with how many buys? I don't know, say there was 8, and you're down to how many players. So I had to go down a little bit for this player, but he is, as you're saying, fantasy points a game, like 15.8 is not like overly sexy, right? Like it's good once you start looking at the tiers throughout, and he's fairly consistent, but he's not reaching the 100-yard clip as often. He's at like 72 rushing yards, 42, 72, like high now, and he scores. So there's certain players like that, and he's catching the ball decent, and few catches every game, 27 receptions, not bad, right? But only 6 average. So I think he's just one of those players, nice to play when you have, the benefit of the doubt. But if you have some other replacements or from some better matchups, maybe go for that. UCF's fairly tough, 44th, not bad against the position. So I just feel, you're trying to get me to make some difficult decisions. This is the process you've given me. And I just think, maybe that, and a downside a little bit. Arizona's not performing the way we thought. We thought they were going to be, this juggernaut, I think, in NCAA, but I feel, they're on a bit of a losing streak. So, I'd like to get more to them. I like the player, like a nice player, and he falls in line. You have to have this player on your roster. But if you have to make a difficult decision, maybe this week, maybe not. UCF can kind of, play tough here and there against the run. But I don't know. I searched long and high. Those top 50, but it's hard to sit a lot of these guys in the top 50. But this is what
in the top 50 for a reason, right?
That's right.
Scorers,
right.
Justin Nottingham, did Mims get hurt Saturday? He did not play late in the game. I haven't seen any news on Delbert Mims being injured. I just saw an update. Look for an update 16 hours ago. Said looking to carry the high workload against Toledo this upcoming Saturday. So it's looking like he's ready to go. Outpacing every other running back more than 3 times against Akron this past weekend. Delbert Mims, baby. Let's go. Delbert Mims. All right. The running back play, Elijah Young from Western Kentucky. The running back fade, Quayle Conley from Arizona. Mike, you got the wide receiver play this week, brother. One of my picks from one previous week is one of your picks this week. So I ain't mad at you.
No, I wonder. We've been waiting. So a lot of these players, I find each week I'm focusing in on like players that I want more of, or like when I just talk Conley, or I just want, like, we expect more in fantasy, right? That's our job as fantasy managers. We want more points, and trying to find the matchups that will go. This player has lots of speed to burn, and 17 yards per reception is nice. I wrote like that is nice. So we just need a few more receptions. I can't remember. A couple weeks ago we talked about a player, whoever I pick, same thing. If they can boost their targets a bit, get to that double-digit mark in college is key. So I'm hoping they're playing on a great team that is on a roll themselves. 7-1, I think. So it's a momentum pick for me. His last 5 games, the targets are up. 370 yards, 3 TDs. He's the best wide receiver on that team, so he's one of the first choices to go to. So I feel if they keep the momentum with their record, take advantage of using, on this team, ball-controlled clock. I'm just hoping you get more production, get some more targets. Houston can be, I think there might be some scoring, and Houston tends to score a bit as well. So I kind of went on that, on those points. But again, in all honesty, with what we've set apart to do this, to make tougher decisions, it increasingly tough after we listed those teams and the guys not playing, to try to find what fits the parameters of what we're doing. But like that player, I played him this past week. I have him on in flex spot. Yeah.
All right. Sweet. Good stuff. Playing Jace Brown from Kansas State. The fade.
Chase Brown.
The fade. Camden Benjamin, after an electric week for Tulsa. Camden Benjamin has been great as of late. Currently the wide receiver 27 in fantasy points per game, and the wide receiver 22 in total fantasy points, 54 targets over his last 5 games, 15 targets in week 9 to go along with 34 fantasy points. In my opinion, it is a great sell spot for Camden Benjamin. The 4 games prior to this matchup, Camden was averaging 8.5 fantasy points per game. He's by far the leading target for Tulsa, but hasn't been catching many touchdowns, only 5 on the year. He has a 10% touchdown rate, catching 1 touchdown for every 10 receptions. In perspective, Ricky White, Devontae Ross, Ja'Cory Brooks all have an 18% touchdown rate, almost double, and they sit in that same reception bracket as Camden Benjamin, somewhere around that 50 reception mark. He'd be a top 12. He'd be a wide receiver 1 for college fantasy if he was able to get up into that touchdown bracket like those other wide receivers. This week he does draw UAB. UAB has the 7th best defense against opposing quarterbacks, allowing only 159.3 passing yards per game, which doesn't spell great things for Camden Benjamin. Opposing wide receivers are averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game against UAB. They have been susceptible in the past, but their 2 corners have been absolute studs. Colby Dempsey and Kelvin Hill, both allowing a sub 50% reception percentage, 133 and 131 receiving yards against. Through 7 games, Mike, through 7 games, those 2 corners have allowed 131 and 133 reception yards against on the year. That is not a per game number. That is on the year. On the year. He says. Like Rick Ross on the mic.
That's right.
That's right. The production is just too touchdown dependent to be trusted against what appears to be a decent coverage defense. Now, you could look into that UAB schedule and say, Chris, they haven't faced a bunch of great teams. And I would look at you and say, you're right. But against the teams that they have faced that have been good, their opposing wide receivers just haven't put up a great deal of fantasy points. And that's why, for me, this week, Camden Benjamin is a fade, Michael. So the play is Chase Brown from Kansas State, and the fade after a 34-point week last week is Camden Benjamin from Tulsa. You starting him, Mike, or you sitting him? You taking my advice? No.
I don't know if I own him.
I'm not trusting you. You're a bum.
I don't know if I own him. Maybe one.
Maybe one share. All those best ball leagues, maybe you got one share, but those best ball leagues don't matter. Start sits don't matter. Plays and fades don't matter.
Love it. Favorite college leagues.
No, I hate it, man.
No, I don't. I'm just teasing.
I love having the advantage of setting lineups, man.
I'm just teasing. Yeah.
All right, let's get to our last position.
Look
Week
at it.
10 college fantasy football plays and fades. One of the sexiest positions on the field, and that is the college football tight end. And my play on the week is Jean-Michel Gillenborg from Wyoming. He's got New Mexico this week.
Say that again.
Yes, he's coming off a game where he has only saw 4 receptions, 1 target for 6 yards. But considering he's missed 2 of Wyoming's 8 games, he is currently the leading target for the Cowboys pass attack, a lot of which has come in 4 games. But that's what you want out of the position. In those 4 games, Gillenborg is averaging 7.5. See, I even got the twang on the numbers with it too. 7.5 targets, 78 yards per game with a 28% team target share. He's averaging 11.25 fantasy points per game, which isn't great, but it's good enough for a tight end 1 weekly finish. He's at tight end 11 through those productive weeks. So that, like I said, tight end 1 production. He has 30 targets through that span. The next closest is a wide receiver with 13 targets. He's nearly doubling, he's beyond doubling the targets over anybody else in that Wyoming pass catching room. He's the leading tight end out of all qualifying tight ends in average depth of target at 14.3, while being the tight end 5 in total targets through that span. Opposing tight ends are averaging 7.2 fantasy points per game against New Mexico, which isn't great, but they have yet to face a tight end that is the focal point of their team's offense. The over-under set for this game is 59.5 points, so Vegas is expecting a ton of points to be scored with or through Jean-Michel Gillenborg, Michael.
Yeah.
You're starting JMJ because of the projected total points that are projected to be scored and his role in that offense, Michael.
Yeah, as you're discussing there, I'm thinking they need to bring back Jake Allen. Right? Jake Allen. That's who they need.
Jake Allen. They need to bring back Josh Allen.
Or Josh Allen, sorry.
AJ Jones can be a guy.
Here I'm talking. They need the goalie, eh? They need the goalie, Jake Allen. They need Josh Allen.
Rhythms here is talking about JJ Jones from UNC, I believe, the wide receiver, right?
Right.
But this week, you have a pass catcher as a fade for the Tar Heels, but it's not JJ Jones. Who is it, Mike?
Ooh. Yeah, and you were saying how nice they looked. He's in the baby blue. You said the sexy position of tight end in the baby blue Tar Heels. Well, the only reason I picked this player was actually, to humble myself amongst this. I've been talking this player up, and I thought, looking through all the tight ends, it's hard to go through, figure out what we want to do with some of these players. But the reason I picked it, I really thought they'd thrive on going to this player after Nesbitt went down. He he actually, I think, if we look back at the games, was a little more productive when Nesbitt was in. And I'm like, why? Well, then I dug deeper, and I think Hampton's numbers were lesser when both tight ends were in. So it's the ebb and flow of how that offense has went. And now Hampton's targets are going up. I thought those targets, so I would go to Copenhagen, John. It's not to say that they can't come back to do that, but they're usually a heavy tight end targeted team. But I mean, he's around like the 7 points and stuff like that. Like that's in no man's land, even though you were said there was weeks where there were under 5, a lot of the players we were playing. I mean, so I think just go an alternate route, since it looks like now we've had these few games to see if his target share would increase. But the 30 yards is not. I mean, that's just not happening. I thought he's a good tight end, but that being said, the targets aren't going there. They're spreading them to other people. They have a couple decent wide receivers on the team. But I mean, so it wasn't a big number crunch digging into that. I think that they're going very heavy on Hampton. Quite heavy. So looking at the games, I'm like, I don't blame them. I mean, we're struggling. Yeah. But I'd hope far more out of him for the tight end position. Because it was frustrating having Nesbitt and Copenhagen when they're both healthy, not knowing what to do with them. They were probably one of the biggest tight end flex duo in college. I can't think of many other teams that were using two like that. So anyhow, that was a slight on me. I thought it would solve a problem and help increase at that position for me, but it hasn't helped. So
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the fade there. JJ Jones is like the Daniel Jackson at Minnesota, rather the same players. Yeah, you're not wrong there. I really like Jones the last 3 weeks, leading to get hot for a playoff run. He is the leading target with Nesbitt out for UNC. His last 5 games, 10 targets, 7 targets, 5 targets, 3 targets. 7 targets, 3 touchdowns over his last 2. You're liking what JJ Jones has been able to do to put on tape, man. What's up, Big Jerry? Jerry Bagshaw's in the chat. We appreciate each and every pop your eardrums there, Mikey.
Yeah, man, I'm just jumping around here. It's almost my bedtime again, eh? I gotta get some caffeine. Where's the coffee?
Okay, let's go through these guys and get you out of here. Get you to your bed there, Michael. The play and fade for the quarterback week 10. The plays Nick Vattiato from Middle Tennessee. The fade is Will Howard from Ohio State. At the running back position, the play is Elijah Young. The fade is Quayle Conley. Wide receiver play Jace Brown. Fade Camden Benjamin. And at the tight end position, your play is John Michael Gillenborg. And your fade is John Copenhagen.
John Copenhagen.
Out of Rhythm Fantasy says, I love UNC. They have their run game, which is really why. Yeah. You have a Mario and Hampton.
I have him on
ball.
Let's see. I got him rolling. Give him the rock.
All right, Mike. Any last words before we get out of here?
Yeah, as we were talking, looking at the matchup, that's all is be careful this weekend. I looked through all the matchups. A lot of defensive matchups with teams like Virginia Tech playing, Illinois playing, and all. You went through the teams, quite the offensive quarterback productive players that aren't playing. So this week is going to be tough. I think we'll see lower fantasy output across the board unless we play some of these guys like Nick Fatatiata or whoever we're going to come up with. And some of your players that you picked, Chris, like on some of the lower conference teams, there's a lot of the top 50 sitting it out. So you're going to have to go down and find some.
We got one question before we get out of here, Mike, from Justin Nottingham. Kentrell Bullock or Fluff Bothwell this week for South Alabama? Oh, no, for South Alabama. Pick one full PPR, both out of the same backfield. Who do you got, Mike?
I've been watching this team when you told me to pick up Fluff, I did, and then I've been alternating him week to week, and it's been alternating between Bullock and Bothwell week to week. Bothwell seems to get less carries, but then has more breakout carries. Bullock's getting typically more carries, I believe, and then grinding that out into the style of play that they're playing. So they're both interesting. They both could almost be plays this week, depending on what your running backs are with all those layoffs and teams on buys. But I think it's hard to pick one. I think it got to be a problem. They have a third back they even give carries to. I think they give some carries to a third back. And with Gio running. So I found it a little frustrating.
I'm going to try to create some clarity because Mike wasn't able to do that there for you.
I don't know if I play.
It's a great matchup against Georgia Southern. I'm going to lean towards, with the 1 PPR, I'm going to lean towards Fluff in this situation. They kind of carry the workload carry-wise out of the backfield, but Fluff is a little bit more involved in the passing attack. And with it being 1 PPR, I'm going to lean a little bit towards more towards the guy in Fluff that has that role for his offense. Not saying that Bullock doesn't catch the ball, but over the last 5 games, 2 targets, 3 targets, 3 targets, 1 target, 1 target. Where if you look at what Fluff has been able to do, 1 target, 3 targets, 5 targets, 3 targets, 0 targets. So not the greatest amount of production catching the ball, but if he's getting the same amount of carries, and like Mike said, if his carries are more explosive, then I'm going to lean towards the guy who's going to be getting those receptions, because in a 1 PPR league, every reception could give you that advantage. So right. I'm going to lean Fluff. I'm going to lean Bothwell this week, Justin. He says he's in buy hell. Or he's saying, right. He's in buy hell.
Where you're on your phone for the lineup change and you go in and all you see is red down the left column. Red. I'm like,
I had a lineup where I think I had to take out every guy. It was ridiculous.
I'm like, who drafted this team? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did.
I mean, it's a good sign because you got a lot of the top guys out this week. That means you got a lot of them on your roster. But
true.
God damn, man, valid, 20 teams this week, Michael.
And if you drafted some stacks, that just came to my mind, which I think in there, if you drafted some stacks from that, oh my God, in hell,
you're hurting this week.
No doubt.
With Justin. Bye week hell, Justin. All right. Make sure you're checking out every other show on the Fantasy and Frames Network. We got the Waiver show tomorrow. Wednesday's jam-packed with Dynasty 365, 4th and Frames, and Shoot the Gap. A lot of great information across the board. Thursday, I think, I'm drawing a blank. I know I'm missing a show on Thursday. I know there's a fantasy show on Thursday. And then there's the DFS show. So great possibility to win money with the DFS show. There's all kinds of articles. You got the Dynasty evaluation. You got Around the Ice. You got the college betting show with JT. The fantasy hockey show. I'm pretty sure I'm missing something, man. I'm kicking myself in the ass after I end this stream. But make sure you're following at Fantasy and Frames across all social media platforms. We are everywhere. We appreciate each and every person that has followed us, liked the stream, or subscribed to Fantasy and Frames because they play college fantasy football. The season is sadly almost over, and we're excited and we are beyond happy that you decided to join us for the stretch. So for Mike at FF Mike H, for myself, Chris, we'll see you next week.
Week 11. Yeah.